Welcome to the AGC podcast. If you don't know us already, the Akuta Group of Companies is a British interior design collective with a portfolio of 6 international award-winning design brands. I'm your host, Tori, and in this pod we'll be revealing exactly what it takes to build a global design collective that works in some of the world's most exclusive postcodes. You'll meet the talented individuals behind each brand, as well as the many interesting people that have joined us along the way. Stay with us to hear more about how we got here, where we are going, and how we plan on being a force for good in this world of possibilities. We're thrilled to be sat here with 2 very notable tutors from the University of the Arts London. So Nadine Bennett and Denea Joseph. Thank you both very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So I'm going to, for the benefit of the listeners, give them a bit of background as to the relevance of this podcast and why we have you here. So a few years ago, we were on a mission to find a creative and sustainable solution to our end-of-life products. So we usually try and give end-of-life products to British Red Cross where we can, but they're not always accepted by them. And we can't always salvage everything with a magic man. So we spoke to UAL about how we could find an innovative and creative solution to finding products a new home. And we came up with a partnership where we trialled it last year. And this year we have partnered with the Product and Furniture Design Programme at the Chelsea College of Arts. And from what I hear and what I've seen, it was a huge success. 52 students took part, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
So you're both here to tell us a little bit more about the project and the outcomes for its students.
Yes.
So we'll dive straight in. And if you could just give us a little intro into your background and role at UAL.
Yes. Okay, so we're both quite new, actually, aren't we? So we work together as year 1 leads, which means we take that first year cohort through. This particular project was the last project they do with us, Unit 4.
Okay.
So a lot of our nurturing and preparation went into the first 3 units to get them to that point to feel confident enough to do a live, what we call a live project with a client.
Is that sort of them then spreading their wings afterwards?
No.
They're not quite after that.
Yeah, they're year 2. You know a bit more about year 2, don't you?
Yeah, so in year 2, they have a lot more kind of live projects. So I think towards the end of year 1, that's when we have like the big kind of like live project where they actually get to do furniture design.
Yeah.
And it's kind of all their projects from the start where they kind of like, because a lot of them are coming from different backgrounds as well. So some of them are coming from school, college, some have done all of that, are in the workforce and actually decide to change, career paths. And what we try to do in the first year is kind of set them up with the basic skills. We do a lot of kind of like drawing, a lot of model making, a lot of kind of like exploring the design process. And then that kind of leads them up to the final project, which we've done with AGC, and they kind of get to put those skills that they've learned, see what they can do with these finite resources as well. So yeah,
so it's a really diverse program. Access to.
I mean, design itself, particularly I think 3-dimensional design, is you've got to really go at it quick and fail fast. You've got to find those problems because you're effectively inventing stuff that doesn't exist. There's no guidebook on how to make that. You've got to work that out. So they learn quickly that they've got to attack problems and trial and test with materials. So, and it paid off, didn't it?
Yeah,
it paid off on this project. We were really proud of them.
I think it's a bit of a shock to the system because we start head on. So the projects do go quite fast. So when they initially come to us, they usually we'll do a project, they have an idea of what they want to make at the end, but actually soon they realise that actually you've got to go through, this iterative process and go through a lot of trial and error and fail fast. We try to encourage them from the start, like it's okay if it doesn't go right. It's actually better if it doesn't because there's a lot of learning that goes on through that. So
some of them, they don't believe it's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
They just think it's like this perfect incarnation in their head that's just going to manifest itself.
And of course, there's always issues.
Yes.
And it must be satisfying for both of you to see your work and energy, the the work that you put in then come out into, and then seeing the products that they actually produce.
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think during the process of the project, sometimes you think, oh, okay, like, is it going okay? Are we giving them what, have they got all the resources that they need? Or, you have like because you have different students from different backgrounds going through different things, they're coming from all different walks of life. You want to make sure that they're okay, that they're getting what they need, they're asking the right questions, especially having a lot of international students. So you want to make sure that you're able to kind of like, I don't know what's the word, to not look after, but
catering to
cater
needs.
to everyone and their needs, and making sure that they feel comfortable to be able to explore the things that they want to. Because I think especially in first year, it's this whole thing of, oh, is this right, is it wrong, like, how am I going to get graded? But actually, like, push your ideas, come, as long as you've got a rationale for why you want to do something and you're able to explore that. It's not whether we like it or not, but it's more about that process and exposing them to these kind of different skills and opportunities and ways of working and thinking. So yeah.
And what do you think the value is for having a sort of a real world project like this one is for the students?
I think it makes meaning to the learning. So when we're teaching them a lot of theory, we always try and put real world context in, but it's not as powerful until someone else is saying it. There's someone else being a client, and they're really respectful of these professionals coming in and setting them this challenge. And then they start to join the dots on the theory in a commercial setting. Oh, that's why we've been working hard on our presentation communication. Oh, that's why she wants to understand why I'm doing this, and I think that it just sort of really sort of finished the year nicely for us, definitely. And you asked us about if we were really proud of them or words to that effect, and I think we were quite nervous how they were going to respond. And it's just we started for the project, and I thought, oh, at least we've got one good project, and then two came about, and there's three, and I'm like, okay, I'm all right for formative. There's at least 5 good ones.
Safe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, like the value of doing a project like this, it kind of allows them to put the skills that they've acquired and learned from the course so far into action, into real life, and exactly what Nadine said, kind of like it makes it a lot more real, and then for them to also see like actually how the whole collaborative process is not just that, for example, like looking at marketing, graphics, and as well as it's not just kind of, oh, I like this, so I'm going to design this.
Were they all put into small groups, or did some of them do it on their own?
No, they were, and they impressed us actually how well they worked in groups. In some respects, you think, are we forcing it on them? But actually, they really stepped up, didn't they? And they worked out really quickly how the shared skill set is more beneficial. The winning team, they have one guy who's really techie, and then a girl who's like the perfect project manager, and then one guy who's a perfect maker, and they just
they were like dream team.
Yeah.
Dream team.
It was actually really amazing to see how they worked together, because we kind of, when setting up the groups, we made it that, people who hadn't worked together before, we were quite strategic about how we done it. So people who hadn't really spoken, who didn't really know each other, they'd get put into a group together. But also, for example, you'd have more of the quieter students with people who, were a bit more kind of, not necessarily on it, but a bit more kind of like vocal. So they were able to like balance each other out, and you could really see how students who were kind of like A students helping some of the students who were maybe like C students, and how they helped to actually really build up their confidence as well. So it was really lovely to see actually. And some of the students who in the last unit were a lot less confident, you could really see them come out of themselves, and not necessarily being the loudest person in the room, but actually just having that self-confidence and actually producing some really, really great work. So yeah, we, by the end of it, we were really, really proud of them. I know they worked so hard. You could see they were so tired as well.
I bet, but it's so nice to see. It's so rewarding to see at the end.
I think we're also really fortunate. We're one of the very few London creative universities that has studio space. And so where they were working together in their studios, it enabled a much smoother collaboration. I think when they separate, you always get a bit like, oh, are they doing their bit? And they were just a bit more aware of each other. They were present. They were working together, and I think that's where the looking out for each other really came on.
Yeah,
So
it's like they kind of build
very
a
lucky.
really lovely community, and then you can see friendships form out of that as well, which then they'll go into their second year.
They know how they can work together. 'Cause
Exactly.
I think on most courses, if you're not doing projects like that, you see them on a social level and that's
Yes.
it. You
Yeah,
don't need
exactly.
to work with someone, you don't know how you need to get on with them in a different environment.
Absolutely.
So it's a great skill to be teaching them. Do you think it was a challenge for them on a creative level as well?
Yes, I do. I think so. Something we've not talked about is that you guys provided us with complete and incomplete pieces of furniture, which the students could then deconstruct and make into completely different objects. And that gave them enough freedom, but also enough constraint so that they didn't procrastinate. So it gave them a bit of a avenue to run down with their creativity and a bit of certainty. I think the constraint gives certainty, doesn't it? That they're like, this seems like the right way to go.
Yeah, I think yes and no. I think having these resources, because we assigned them the pieces, and at first some of them are like, well, what are we supposed to do with this like big block of wood that's supposed to be a tabletop? Like, what do you mean? And I think it was a real challenge at the start, because we're essentially asking them to, okay, rethink how can you use these materials? You have to use it. Yes, you can bring things in, but if you don't use, like, say, for example, the skeleton of the chair, or actually you've been given a whole chair, it's, got marks or it's a bit torn in places, but how are you going to hack it? How are you going to recreate and rethink how to use these materials? And I think through kind of deconstructing, so we had like some sessions where we took the stools and other furniture apart, and that really helped them to understand, okay, these are the finishes that were used, and got them to consider, like, ask more questions as well. Because we're continuously asking them, okay, why, how, oh, what if this, what if that? Ask yourself more questions. So they were kind of forced to do that. So understanding, okay, what screws were made, how was that inserted into this place, and just consider all, like, the whole object within itself, in order to then manipulate it in ways that they wanted to manipulate, and kind of rethink. So there were some students who were using, a lot of students actually, who were using traditional craft techniques, so like weaving and kind of applying them to unconventional contexts.
Yeah.
So the processes, applying the processes to unconventional contexts. So it really kind of helped them to think, as well as using like handcraft, how can they use machine processes? So hand techniques and machine processes, and how the two can actually coexist together.
Yeah.
So it kind of, they're forced to almost be a bit more explorative.
They see their own projects, and then we have the presentation at the end, and they see others. And I think there's a lot of lessons learned from the ones that have really put the hours in all the way through to get that finish.
Yeah. You can see the hours, time people have put in. But I feel like it's a competitive environment will make people put in the hours, I think. Yeah. On the whole.
I think so. Yeah.
Most people want to.
Yeah, I think it's varied, because it really depends on the individual student. So that can even make someone want to, okay, yeah, this is competitive, like I want to go at it. And it can actually make a lot of students go the other way.
And how did working with the existing materials influence the students' sort of creativity and design for their projects?
What we've said to them is, this is our new reality. This is something that they have to accept now as designers, that virgin material is not always going to be the way forward, and it's going to become more that case as well. And the cost of, I want to say, sort of lonely, lost objects going into landfill that's a cost to the producer now. Their cost to businesses to deal with that waste. And I don't think they've really I think they thought about it, but actually really seeing the potential for that wasn't in place until they've done that project,
Yeah.
which was quite exciting. I think they've thought a lot about making new materials,
Yeah.
but not, thinking about, that's, if I strip all that back, that's a really lovely bit of ash under there. How can I work with that? And that's a good bit of material. I'm going to dye it and then restitch it. And I think that changed their minds. They became quite resourceful as well. And I think that will set them up for their next projects as well.
I think a lot of the time we do think about, sustainability, like new materials, biodegradable materials, landfill, all of these things. But actually, we've got so much of these materials already. We've got a large resource. Actually, what can we start to do with that? And I think it's something that maybe is not established right now, but is actually like a seed has been planted in their thinking. So because they've been given these finite, like they've been given limited resources that they have to work with, it kind of forces them to be a bit more explorative. And with some of the projects, you can see that really shining through. Like in one of the projects, there was the weaved chair where they had like a skeleton of a stool, and then also they had half a bed, so they had the foam, and they kind of like cut up the foam. They done a lot of kind of explorative drawings, kind of seeing and also playing with the actual physical materials and seeing how that can be woven into the chair, or how the two can kind of be combined. So it kind of forced them to kind of push the boundaries of their thinking a little bit. And I think maybe that's not they haven't fully realized it, because sometimes I think as tutors you can say things, and you can also say, oh, this is the reason why we're doing this. This will help you to do X, Y, and Z in the future, or as you go along with your projects. But I know for me, until I finished university, a lot of the things I was taught, I didn't really see as valuable until I actually left, or I had to go into the actual workforce, that I saw that actually I'm able to go back to what I have learned, be able to do X, Y, and Z with it. I think sometimes that comes later on.
I think also they were educated by the B Corp certification that AGC has.
Yeah.
And that was a real eye-opener on how seriously businesses need to think about sustainability, need to think about their supply chain, their compliance for that supply chain. So there was deeper learning into sustainability other than looking at waste material.
Yeah.
Which we think is of really good value for them.
Because I think I was just going to say, you need it in the real life world now.
Exactly.
I think obviously it's still a total work in progress for so many companies, but if you have that edge and you already know, you've already thought about things like that, you know what to think about, you know what elements are needed, that's just going to help so much more than not having had that experience.
Exactly. And also a lot of the students coming into the course, they are very much aware, and they're aware that it's something that affects them today. So even I had a student the other day, we were making models out of out of paper, and his first thought was, oh, is this going to be recycled, or how are we going to reuse these materials? So it's very much like on their mind, so they really come into the course. I think with a lot of design courses, it's like it's almost a thing, there's a fear there, there's some sort of like a drive there to be more sustainable, and that's why there's this when it comes to making like new materials and more sustainable materials, even in other projects that we do, we can see like certain students who are actually really considering this and are very aware, and they want to kind of explore these avenues as well, so you can really see that.
Yeah. And do you think the project has given students a good insight into the realities of client work, working with real life briefs?
Yeah, definitely. I think particularly communication points, being able to articulate what the intention is behind your work, and being able to stand up to present, visual communication, all of those elements came together well. And I think just going back again to the sustainable side, I think they have now got their ears open more. to how legislation's coming in to change things. And they really feel like they're part of the crest of the wave, hopefully.
Yeah. I think they probably are, though, aren't they, at this time?
Yeah, I mean, like we've all been talking about this for decades, haven't we? You know, and things don't happen. I mean, we've got in April 25, manufacturers are going to have to pay a levy on materials for packaging. And you watch the programmes about this and news cuttings, and it's like it's a surprise because people know it's coming, but they don't really want to face the financial impact. And it sort of has to get to that point where we're at now, isn't it? We're like the uncomfortable point.
Yeah, pushing everyone.
Yeah.
Not too far, because it's not too far, but you're pushing them to the point where they need to do something about it.
I think, like, I've been teaching sustainable design probably about 10 years now, and it used to be really like you talk to students and they just want to hide under the duvet. You know, it was really like gloom and doom. But the more now where they see companies are actually acting on it, it feels more comfortable. It feels like they can take the duvet off.
Well, I think design has always been quite a wasteful industry, hasn't it, in the past? And that's why it's sort of needed to change. Like most industries, everyone's wasteful because we know no different. But now there has been no excuse in the last few years to try and at least start making that change. Yeah.
You're so right, because design is new. It's what's the next thing. And
you're looking
it's there to appeal.
What can you do? What can you make that's new out of anything?
Yeah.
Whereas it's just spinning that on its head and seeing what can we make with what's existing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the hard thing, because I'd love to think about it on a mass scale, but it's so much harder, isn't it, to think what's the future for. You can't do it on a mass scale of rethinking products.
Well, I guess that then you question mass production, right? Whether what is the detriment more of a problem than the positives. I'm not sure if I articulated that correctly, but I think there are some really exciting things happening about polymer recycling, chemical recycling, but I think the problem is the circulation of those materials is not happening quick enough. It's still cheaper to get virgin polymers through from fossil fuel. At what point is that going to change? Probably this year will have made a big change, I think, with the cost of oil. But until there's a readiness for companies to say, right, we're going to take that recycled plastic and we're going to do this with it. You see it a bit in packaging, but not so much in appliances or raw products.
Yeah. And I guess with having projects like this as well, we're educating students to be kind of more mindful and intentional and like considerate designers.
We're going to talk about the double diamond with our students tomorrow. So to really question where these design briefs come from and is that the right route?
What's the double diamond?
So the double diamond is the design process for product design. So if you go to the Design Council, look up the double diamond, and what it does is often companies are presenting a brief to a design company, which may be, I want you to design this glass bottle so I can charge more. It's more appealing, has higher perceived value. And the reality is actually, should the question be, we should design this bottle so it can be reused. So it's looking at, it's responding with responsibility, I think, in the context of sustainability. I think that's what we're looking for our students. And going right back to that first question, as those students come in, they want to know the answers, and we want them to start saying, okay, what's the questions to get the right answers? We're not just an answer machine. You need to be going out and answering and finding these questions and really testing whether you think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, my next question was going to be on how these experiences and projects like this influence sort of the students going out into the real world, and in 5-10 years' time, what impact will it have on the industry? But I guess we're sort of touching on it, saying they're going to take their thinking with them, and that's going to influence what they're doing in work-wise, and hopefully maybe even in day-to-day impact of what they're doing, and just thinking about sustainability as a whole.
I think 5 years ago, you would have had a lot of informed students who understand sustainability, and then they go out into the workplace and they're very frustrated because commercially companies weren't acting in a sustainable way. But of course, that's changed quite a lot over the last 5 years. You guys yourselves have seen that in your own company. So you've got right to repair rules coming in. There's more pressure on the producer. And it becomes an easier set of design discussions for them to be part of. And hopefully, it's always difficult. We like to say, oh, you know, we're preparing you to be the leaders in how design should be. But they never feel like that when they're junior designer and they've just left.
When they're so young.
But it feels like now that they can have a conversation, and that is a conversation that everyone wants to have. And it's not like, oh yeah, that's like a student project. This is real design and commerce. It's actually, no, sustainability really needs to be considered because it affects bottom line. So I think I think the nature of doing live projects is always good, but the nature at the moment of looking at sustainability in live projects is essential.
Yeah.
And I think the students really, they've got an appetite for it and they understand it, and they want to to quote my friend Liz Chikilo, they want to imagine a world through design that they want to live in.
And do they keep you updated with where they've gone on to? Do you hear from
Mercedes?
them
Yeah.
Oh, we have a graduate who, she had a great project where she was looking at the wool industry.
Yeah.
And the wool industry in this country, the quality of our wool is not very good because our soil is not very good. And so this wool has been burnt. So she couldn't deal with this. And she decided to create a new product for this wool. And she made these great shoes.
Oh, wow.
That she called Hoos, which is really lovely.
Yeah, she made her own packaging and everything.
Moccasin type shoes.
That's incredible.
Through felting the wool to create the material. And
I'm picturing like, what are they called? Crocs, but in
it was more kind of like
versions,
like a wallaby kind of style.
Okay.
Was it wallaby? It was
she said wallaby.
Yeah,
she was a key influence.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she spoke to lots. She went to a sheep shearing farm. She spoke to lots of stakeholders. But through that project, she's gone to work for a company that is doing exactly what she wants to do, which is to sort of re-enlighten the UK wool industry.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when she
And
speaks
it's
about
like,
it, you can just really hear the
it's so
passion.
exciting.
Yeah. She's so passionate about it, and it's really lovely to see. And we had a presentation, like a welcome presentation for all the students at the start of the academic year. And some of the graduates came in to present. So that's when Mercedes came to present. And even talking to a lot of the first years after the presentation. So she ended it, which was great.
Yeah,
she did. I'm going to close this.
Yeah, she closed the show. And even speaking to some of the first years, they were kind of in awe. They were like, yeah, wow, she spoke so passionately. Like they were amazed by the things that she was able to do. So it was actually really encouraging for like now the first years, and I'm sure the second and the third years now as well.
Knowing that they can achieve
exactly
if possible.
Yeah, and she also she did the Hoof project, but she did a piece of furniture. I forget what the name of the furniture was, but it was shortlisted for Young Furniture Makers. So she was so she was part of that exhibition.
Impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, so when they put the work in and they put the energy and passion in, this is what happens.
And do most of the students go into design afterwards?
We can't really speak for Chelsea because we're quite new, but I'd say generally, like nationally, you're looking at the top 20% will smoothly go into design easily. But as Denea says, it's such a broad area. Physical, digital product design, anything that's related to user experience. It goes slightly into sort of office, retail, interior. There's so many strands. I think there is a lot of opportunities. I feel these new opportunities that we've talked about that relate to sustainable material, that was really great to see.
Let's hope they all go down that path and find new ways of using products, because that's what we need.
Absolutely.
So what support do students need from the school when they're entering the workplace? Is there anything you can do to help them?
I think there's a journey that starts. We sort of in Unit 4, you do life projects.
Mm-hmm.
You meet Lewis and the employability team.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they go into the second year, they start to create a presence on LinkedIn. They start to investigate companies that they're interested in. And I think if they start to make that path happen, start to create a profile for themselves, enter competitions, they'll have an easier walk into the workplace. They'll have choices because they've taken time to make those network connections.
Yeah.
So I think the big step is interfacing with industry, companies, and that takes a little bit of self-belief. And in some respects, it's a choice they have to make. They can choose to say, right, I'm going to be a designer and I'm going to go for this. Or they can just stay on the pavement, on the curb and think, am I going to
And I guess
make that
it's
step?
quite difficult when you, especially if you're coming into university and you're like, what's that, 18?
19,
It's
yeah.
18, 19, like you're a bit more, this not all students, but a lot of students are quite timid and quite scared, and even to ask more questions, because it's this whole thing of, oh, is this right, is this wrong, can I do this, can I do that? So it is a bit kind of daunting to kind of like take that leap or take that step, because when they're applying for university and they're seeing the course titles, they're thinking, okay, that's what I want to be, that's what I want to be. But actually sometimes until you've experienced had some experience within the field or done an internship or, gone to observe whatever it is or gone to ask someone who's in the field more questions, their thinking can be quite linear. So in that respect, I think we kind of need to, which is a really difficult job, but kind of open them up and help them to see that actually there's so many different options, and to be excited about those options, and to really understand that actually, like, while you're here, we will help you, but also it's that kind of thing of you've kind of we're guiding you, but you've got to take that step. So I think it's a lot of it's building their confidence.
Absolutely.
And some can do that easier than others depending on their surroundings and their upbringing. So I think I think being a tutor as well, you're not just teaching them design or guiding them in that kind of area, but actually it's kind of general support. So whether that's like what do we call
Pastoral.
it? Pastoral.
Pastoral/parental.
Yeah, exactly that. Because sometimes you notice that you'll have certain students that you feel like, oh, why are they being like that, or why are they acting, or why they're being quite like flippant, or they're quite resistant. But it's not until you like peel back those layers, or you actually try to understand them and give them the space to be vulnerable, that you start to see that actually, like, this student isn't the way I thought in my head, but actually they're reacting like this because of the environment that they're currently in. So yeah, really giving them that space to be vulnerable, and like put trust in you, so then you can help them with their confidence to be able to make those steps and those leaps. So yeah,
it's definitely quite foundational, isn't it, that first year? We spoke to someone the other day and she said you just want them to run with you. And I think when they first come in, it's all like, oh, what's this going to be like? Am I going to be good? Am I going to be like this? And you just sort of like, we have to sort of drip feed information. We can't tell you all in one go what it's going to be like. You've just got to trust us and run with us. Let's just hope our colleagues don't cock up all the work we've done.
I mean, let's hope that we do. Exactly. But it's also
you've got to check in on them next year and just see how
constantly. But also they're doing a lot of unlearning as well. So someone told me this example, well, back when I was doing my foundation, they said in school you're taught to colour within the lines, but actually when you come to university, like how do you can cut in between the line, you can like rip it, you can colour outside the line, you can do all sorts with it. It's like how you want to explore it, and how there's multiple ways to colour this square or whatever it is.
And how can external companies help the students as well get into the workplace?
Work experience.
So just
Yes,
through
any opportunity you can give for students, even if I think sometimes when I speak to companies, they're like, oh, but I just think this, they say, I think the student might be a bit bored working with me. And it is quite difficult now. A lot of people work from home. That is quite difficult. But just finding a way for students to observe the workplace and see how their skill set can be valuable in a business environment.
Yeah.
When I say business, that sounds very uncreative, but in a commercial environment.
Yeah, it's a different world, isn't it?
And that gives them a sense of reality, but it also gives them something to talk about when they go for a job interview that has a bit of authenticity and truth to it.
Yeah. They've had that experience.
Yes.
They know what the basics are about.
Even if it's a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even just more projects like this on all different kind of levels, whether it's talks, understanding what the day-to-day in like these companies look like. I come from like a surface design background, and I've gone into fashion and styling, and actually it wasn't until I went into styling that you have this kind of idea of, okay, this is what it's going to be like. You might think, oh yeah, it's quite glamorous, it's this, that and the other, but it's not. It's completely different. And even when you speak to people, they've got a completely different idea to what the job actually entails. They just think, oh yeah, like, you know, you're playing around and like curating outfits and putting them together. There's a lot of hard work behind that. Like when you've got a client, you can't just come with one outfit. You need multiple different outfits. You don't know how things are going to sit on the body. You need to understand like your client and what they want, as well as like how you know the story that they're trying to portray and tell through their clothes, as well as trying to, you know, kind of elevate this and give them what they want, but not really giving them what they want because of the brief that they've got. So there's multiple layers to it, but without actually being in it, you don't know what it's actually like. And students really need to be able to explore multiple different kind of avenues and to see if they actually like something, because to decide, okay, this is exactly what I want to do, to study it and then to come out, get a job in it and then realize, oh, I don't actually like this. Like,
the reality is completely different.
This is quite frightening.
It's very frightening.
And that's the same with interior design. It's until you're in it, you have no idea what's involved.
Exactly.
And there's so many more boring tasks than you ever expect, because it's a lot of admin, which everyone thinks, oh, I'm just going to be creating all day, and it's just not the reality.
Design someone else is going to get the business in, and someone else is going to decide all the risk is gone by the time I do my bit.
And a lot of the time it's glamorized, but in every job that you do, there's going to be aspects that you don't want to do. And I think to open students up to it now, because obviously now there's things that they really don't want to do. You see, they avoid it at all costs. But seeing that actually you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and do stuff that you don't want to do, because actually when you get into work, like it's inevitable.
You're just going to struggle through it, but you're gonna enjoy that, because you'll realize that actually it's nice having the variety of having a job like that.
So you're getting paid.
And you're getting paid, exactly.
Well,
we're looking forward to see how the students progress, your students progress through the years. Hopefully some of them will become the next big designers.
So next up, they're coming to work with you.
Exactly.
So
we'll take them all
tell
on.
us afterwards.
And hopefully the partnership can continue, and next year we can do the same and see how that goes as well. So thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Interior Insider. Remember to subscribe to be the first to listen to our latest episodes, and be sure to comment who you'd like to hear from next. Speak soon.